Right, so I did try and upload this earlier, but unfortunately it cancelled on me, so I've already scribbled on this piece of paper. So the next part 2, is when we're looking at the two hierarchies here. First thing you need to realise is actually what a span of control is. And a span of control is literally the number of staff that are delegated to by the particular manager. So in this case we've got 3, 1, 2, 3 underneath this manager, and then you can see there's 4 for this particular manager here. If the question is about chain of command, that's the number of layers in the hierarchy that a decision has to go through to get from one employee to the next. So chain of command, if it comes up in the exam. This was quite an easy one. It just wants you to give 3 because we're looking at the narrow, because that's obviously a lot narrower, being 3 rather than 4 there is wider. So you just put 3 down there. Right, if I just talk through this, it's about question technique really, and reading the question properly. So we're looking at moving from a narrow span of control to a wide span of control. Right, so that's our first issue here that I've highlighted. So do we go from narrow to wide, yes or no? Once you've made a decision, they want the advantages of your preferred span of control, so the advantages of either the narrow or the wide, depending on which you've gone for. And then they want the disadvantages for the span of control that you rejected. So 6 marks. I would always open up with a definition. Now we know that span of control is about delegation to subordinates, so you could bring that in. Just 1 or 2 lines, and then I would actually say right at the start that I've decided to go for a narrow span of control, because then I can go into the advantages for the narrow, because all they're after are the advantages of narrow, they're not looking at disadvantages. If it's narrow, you can see that there is clear communication. Now if I just flip back, communication is going to be a lot easier when you're only talking to 3 people instead of 4. So there is one of our advantages, that it's narrow and therefore clear communication. If communication is clear, then what you find is productivity goes up. That is how efficient a business works. So decisions get made on time, businesses operate effectively when they are communicating well. And this is really important for Transport PLC because they're an international company. So whenever they are talking to other parts of the business in other areas of the country, then it's really vital that they're getting it right. So if we've got that, we've got our 2 marks there, so we're moving on. We've got 4 out of 6 already, so that's good. And then all we do now is we've looked at the advantages of narrow, we need to do the disadvantages of wide, because we just want the disadvantages of the one that we rejected. Right, the disadvantages of wide span of control is that you have to delegate to more staff. Flip back, yes, we have to delegate to 4 people rather than 3, so that is a disadvantage. When you delegate to more staff, you can become inefficient because more employees are part of the process. This can slow decision making down, and any ideas that you do have, even though there's more, any ideas that you do have, they might not be heard, because 3 members of staff would definitely be able to get their ideas across to this manager, whereas 4, they will be fighting to speak to the manager to get their ideas on the table and agreed. So all in all, that should give us 6 marks. If we then go on to the next page, again, sorry about the fact I've already completed these. So we're looking at 2 key issues. One is the fact that we're looking for to recruit from the local area, and 2 is the fact that we're looking for sales staff. We're not looking for unskilled staff, we're looking for skilled staff. There's 3 options, and we basically have to discuss all 3. So the way I've addressed it is to look at the one that we think is good, the one that I think is an alright suggestion, and then the one that we have to reject outright. So I believe the local newspaper is really good because it reaches, and again, key terms, the target audience of local people, but importantly, it also makes sure that you're probably reaching potential sales staff who are educated. People who read the local paper tend to be the more educated people in society, and if they're in the job market, they will look in the paper. They'll have the right skill set to become a sales member of staff. Now, a job centre's okay, but the problem is it doesn't say whether it's local, so we'd have to question that. And then also, you tend to find that people who use the job centre are unskilled labour force. and the job description, but more important, the person spec for this particular job will describe an ideal candidate, and that ideal candidate will probably have qualifications. Now, if you're asking for qualifications, then people at the job centre might not have the same level of qualifications as the people who read the paper. So that's why that one is an okay option, but maybe not as strong. TV, well, straight away we can reject TV because basically it reaches far too big an audience. We're after local employees, and we're reaching far too many people. It's spreading our net too wide, and therefore it's not cost effective. Next one, we're looking at why group activities would be used in the selection process. We have to look at the job. So the job is for sales employees. It's not for people just sat behind a computer. So sales staff need to be good communicators. Putting them in a teamwork activity, a group work activity, will develop teamwork, and it's an essential skill to communicate when you're a sales employee. So getting them to talk on interview day and seeing who works well, who can discuss things, who can change their and adapt their approach is a skill that we would need in the real job, and therefore let's test it on interview day. These should be fairly straightforward. Working away from home, use the phone, internet, you could use Skype, video messaging. And one barrier, and this is where you have to come back to look at Transport PLC, they operate in Spain as well as the UK, so clearly the time zone is a problem. Now, you would only get 2 marks if you mention time zone, tick, and the fact that they work in Spain, and that could cause some problems because the end and the start of the day are different for those employees. Right, next video coming up in a second.